I pointed out to the emperor that the general esteem did not seem to me to have grown with his power during the past 2 or 3 years. Indeed, that in my view we were declining even as we expanded. I paid tribute to the noble qualities of M. Bassanot, and this seemed to please the emperor, but I pointed out to him that amongst the general public his minister was more blamed for having been a supporter of this war, and generally for not opposing his majesty's warlike zeal, than for the Turkish peace and the Russo-Swedish alliance, because everyone knew that the emperor ruled single-handed, and that his ministers were neither accustomed nor able to settle problems out of hand, to dispose of millions, or to dispatch, on their own authority, agents with the power to do so. Monsieur Bassanot, being his sole confidant, had plenty of other resources at his disposal. To my expressions of doubt regarding this assertion, the emperor replied to me peevishly, "When I tell you a thing, you've got to believe it." The conversation was interrupted by our arrival at a stage where supper had been ordered. The emperor seemed displeased with me. He was tired, and his displeasure was heightened by the fact that he could not shave, as he wished to do, because Rustam had not arrived. He lay down as usual on the long couch which is generally to be found in Polish houses, and rested there for an hour. Supper restored his good humor. That evening we were very well entertained. Was it my honor? Or had the postmaster, as he approached the end of his course, been less afraid of indiscretion? I cannot tell. The fact remains that we were in an excellent house, enjoyed an excellent supper, and the masters of the posting house did the honors with much care and discretion, if they really did know that this was the emperor. Every morning, between 8 and 9 o'clock, when coffee could be obtained at a stage, the emperor drank a cup with milk, sometimes without emerging from the sledge. At night, between 5 and 9, according to the particular stage, the courier ordered supper for us. We rested then for an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, when the meal was slow in coming, so that Monsieur Vonsovitz and the courier could also have time to eat. On arrival, the emperor sometimes made his toilet. He bathed his eyes and stretched out on a couch, for after we left his carriage, he could no longer sleep en route. I took advantage of this time to make hasty notes of our conversations, at least of the matters which seemed to me to have some interest. On December 10th, 2 hours before dawn, we reached Pultusk, where I dispensed with the services of our worthy postmaster, whom the emperor suitably rewarded. While the horses were being changed, the emperor, feeling chilled, entered the local postmaster's house, he being away from home. His young wife made haste to light a fire and to prepare the coffee and soup which we asked for, as we had suffered severely from cold during that night. A Polish servant girl, half-dressed, poked and blew the flames as well as she could, and nearly scorched her eyes out over the poorest fire that ever was made. The emperor inquired what this poor girl earned. It was so little that he remarked that the sum would hardly pay for his woolens. He bade me give her a few Napoleons and tell her they were for her dowry. The poor child could not believe her eyes, and it was not, I think, until after our departure that she realized her joy in her small fortune. The emperor remarked that, in that class, it was possible to make many people happy with very little money. "I am impatient, Caulaincourt," he added, "for the day of general peace, so as to get some rest and to be able to act the good man. We shall spend 4 months in every year traveling without our own frontiers. I shall go by short stages with my horses. I shall see the cottage firesides of our fair France. I wish to visit the departments which lacked proper communications, to build roads and canals, to help commerce and encourage industry. There is an enormous amount to be done in France. There are departments where everything has to be built up from the beginning. I've already busied myself with many improvements, and through the Ministry of the Interior, I've collected very valuable information. In 10 years' time, I shall be blessed as wholeheartedly as I am hated today. In some seaports, commerce is selfish to the point of injustice, constantly anxious to profit, heedless if others lose. Whatever happens, it is I who have created industry in France. A few more years of perseverance, a few more bivouacs, and Marseille and Bordeaux will soon be gathering in the millions they have failed to win. The soup and coffee were slow in coming, and the emperor, numbed by the cold and growing heat of the fire, fell asleep. I seized the opportunity to make notes. When he awoke, his sorry meal was soon swallowed, and we clambered into our sledge again. Although the snow was knee-deep, the emperor visited the defenses at Sirok and Prago. We shook the snow off as best we could before re-entering our cage. For such was exactly the shape of the ancient box in which we were. It was so cold, and we were so pleased at having found this means of progress in spite of the depth of snow everywhere, that the emperor's vanity did not assert itself until we reached the gates of Warsaw. On reaching the bridge over the Vistula, we could not repress a humble reflection on the modest equipage of the king over kings. The aged box, which had once been red, had been mounted on a sled and had 4 large windows, or rather panes of glass set in a worm-eaten sash frames, which did not close properly. The joints of this wreck, 3/4 rotten, gaped on all sides. It gave free access to the wind and snow. I had to be sweeping out the interior of our domicile constantly to keep us from getting soaked through by snow melting on the seats. In spite of all these vexations, the emperor continued very cheerful. He seemed delighted to find himself at Warsaw, and was very curious to see whether he would be recognized. I think he would not have been sorry to have met someone who guessed his identity, for he traversed the city on foot, and we did not take our seats on our humble sledge until we had crossed the main square. It was so cold that no one who could keep warm within doors set foot abroad, and the emperor's green velvet cloak with gold braid only attracted the attention of a few humble passers-by, more eager to regain their own firesides and curious about the names and quality of the travelers, whose costume, however, engaged their attention. They turned to glance, but did not stop. Anyhow, it would have bin difficult to recognize the emperor, for the fur cap he wore covered half his face. At 11 o'clock, we alighted at the Hotel de Saxe, where Amodru had arrived only a few moments previously. I at once sent to the Director General of Posts to the order of the Duke of Vincenza's horses for Caulaincourt, for it was always I who was the distinguished traveler, and the Emperor simply my secretary, under the name of Monsieur Reneval.